What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Danny and Bush coming at you with the last part, the pass catchers, the AFC version of our wide receiver and tight end free agency preview. We did the running backs if you want to go check those videos out. We did the quarterbacks already if you want to go check those videos out. But today we are doing the AFC pass catchers. So, Danny, how are you doing?
Doing well. As always, you guys know this will wrap up the series. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed so far. I can tell you right off the bat, I've learned so much about these teams entering free agency, just studying these cap situations, studying potential landing spots of these players. And to be honest, we're probably not going to get all of them right, but I do think we can get a select few of these predictions right, to be quite honest.
Yeah, we definitely didn't get the Lions quarterback situation right. We didn't think they were going to trade for Jared Goff. And we also, I think we had the value for Matt Stafford as like a second round pick going to Washington. So I think we were way off on that one, but we'll try and be a little bit more accurate with these ones. We're going to hit the intro and then we're going to get right into this. Okay, so on the screen right now, you're going to see the wide receiver free agents. We got big name guys like Allen Robinson, Kenny Golladay, Will Fuller, Chris Godwin, Juju Smith-Schuster, then some kind of middle tier guys, T.Y. Hilton, Sammy Watkins, A.J. Green, Marvin Jones, and Curtis Samuel. And then we got some there's a pretty good free agent class all around, I would say, for wide receivers. And we also know it's a pretty good wide receiver class in the draft as well. So it's a good year to need wide receivers. Tight ends, we're just going to kind of touch over the main tight ends briefly. We'll go through them at the end of the AFC wide receiver kind of talk. We'll talk about the tight end position and where some teams might go in that direction. But you'll see Hunter Henry, Rob Gronkowski, Jonnu Smith, Jared Cook, Gerald Everett, Mo Alley Cox, Trey Burton, and Robert Tonyan on the screen right now as the available tight ends in free agency this year.
For sure. Again, this is a loaded class really at both positions, to be quite honest. Now, again, the depth at tight end is never going to be as good as receiver, but considering that there's 3 or 4 fantasy relevant options from last year on the list, when considering there's probably only 12 or 13 total actual fantasy relevant options at the position, it just goes to show. And then obviously, again, you mentioned with the receiver position, I mean, we've got tier 1, like 1A type caliber receivers available that are most likely not going to be re-signing. Now, you guys interested in seeing where they end up signing, make sure you continue with this video. But I'm super pumped. There's a lot of money available for a lot of teams, and there's a lot of players that deserve that money.
Yeah, and before we get into this, if you guys take any value from it, or if you just want to do it right now, pause the video, go down, like the video, comment any of your thoughts down below. Anything you want to comment helps us out in the YouTube algorithm, as Danny would say. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Hit the bell icon if you want to be notified anytime we post videos. So we're going to start with the AFC North. Basically, we're going to go through team by team if this is the first video of ours you're seeing of us doing this. And we're going to talk about kind of the landing spot first, like what it actually means. And then we're going to talk about who they have under contract and maybe and then make a prediction of who we're going to sign or if they're going to go via the draft. So Cleveland Browns, we crossed out because they have Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry under contract. They just signed they just drafted Donovan Peoples-Jones. Rashard Higgins is a free agent though. So, I mean, there's a chance they add someone low end, but I don't think it's anything to be concerned with.
I can note one thing in particular here. There have been rumblings. I have a couple, not insiders, but a couple people that know what they're talking about when it comes to the Browns. And they've basically been saying like the Browns have been engaging at the values of Odell and Jarvis. Again, from what we know now, if those two are on the team, the Browns just don't need to add much at receiver, maybe a late round flyer to replace the production from Higgins. But if one of those guys are gone, a Bateman, maybe 26 would make sense. Yeah. They can go a number of ways, but again, if those guys are back, I do agree they don't need to really address the position at all, to be quite honest. So
yeah, which is why we crossed them out. We don't need to spend too much time on them. The Pittsburgh Steelers, also a team I don't think we really need to spend too much time on because from a fantasy perspective, they're going to lose Juju Smith-Schuster. I think there's no way in hell that Juju Smith-Schuster is a Pittsburgh Steeler next year, but they already have Deontay Johnson. They already have Chase Claypool, who have both proven to be very great young receivers. So I think the most that they add is just kind of a tertiary receiver. They also have James Washington, who I think is a capable number 3 receiver in the NFL. So if they add someone, it'll probably be a 4th, 5th round kind of rookie type, or maybe they add a low end free agent like Brashad Perriman or something like that. But I don't think they're going to add too much. The first team that we're going to get into that actually does need a receiver really bad, in fact, is the Baltimore Ravens. And with the Baltimore Ravens, I think teams are starting to figure them out, really, because you stop Lamar in his running attack, which is very hard, I might add. It's not easy to do that. But if you're able to do that, then you can shut this team down. And they need to add an element to their passing game that they don't currently have. And that's a physical possession type receiver, in my opinion. They have Hollywood Brown, who could stretch the field. They have Mark Andrews at tight end, who's a great red zone option and can work some intermediate stuff as well. Miles Boykin's the only other receiver of note on the roster, in my opinion. Willie Snead is a free agent. So I think physicality and separation in terms of the basketball team theory of addressing the wide receiver position is the type of receiver that they would need to draft. And I just mentioned him previously. I think to round out this core, what you do if you're Baltimore is you sign Juju Smith-Schuster. I'm looking probably 3 years, $48 million for Juju Smith-Schuster. His value would have been more, but he's had over the last 2 years a bit of a down production in terms of his yards per catch and his total raw production as well.
Yeah, and his total efficiency hasn't necessarily been there because this guy in his first 2 years in the league was one of the premier receivers. Like, as a second-year receiver, he was the wide receiver 4 in fantasy football.
Yeah,
in his age 22 season. Now this guy's hitting free agency. He's kind of a depreciating asset, if you will. But a team like Baltimore is going to find him a home. A team like Baltimore who needs, as you mentioned, that bigger-bodied slot option that can give them a lot more intermediate and possession type value to his game. That's exactly what Juju Smith-Schuster excels at. You got the verticality down the seam with Mark Andrews. You got the speed on the outside into Marquise Brown. Getting your possession guy for a quarterback in Lamar who has his struggles sometimes in terms of his accuracy. Getting a guy who can really secure those intermediate targets would help him a ton in his development. So I love the fit. And again, financially, they are about $16 million under the cap right now. So just enough to fit in that contract. Again, they can create more if they ever needed to, but as of right now, they can afford him. So I do think they can go after him. Yeah.
And I think to me, the other option, obviously, to add a receiver would be to draft one. But I think Baltimore has enough young talent at receiver, like with Hollywood Brown and with Miles Boykin. And it's not like Juju Smith-Schuster is old by any means, right? He's probably 24 years old. So you add a guy like that who actually has some veteran experience to have Lamar take another step in his passing output. It's just way easier on him than adding a rookie who might not be good right away and has to develop and all that kind of stuff. You already have 2 developmental guys with Brown and with Boykin. So I think that closes out the Ravens. I think that's a pretty tremendous fit. Honestly, it was very easy for me to come up with that one. Cincinnati, we're going to go to Cincinnati. I've seen them mock Jamar Chase at number 5 before. No. I totally disagree with that. I think the reason people are doing that is because Joe Burrow is the quarterback and Jamar Chase was his number 1 receiver. It's nothing to do with positional need.
Totally narrative. I mean, the way I'm looking at Cincinnati here is at that fit. Again, this doesn't have to do with the receiver here. I'm just going to briefly mention it. At number 5, it's Slater or it's Sewell. And if either are off the board, they're either trading down or taking their best defensive player on their board.
I think, honestly, a tremendous fit would be if this guy didn't have so many off-the-field concerns. If they had Micah Parsons, like, he's worthy of that pick from a talent perspective, but he's not worthy of that pick from an off-the-field kind of perspective. But
and in terms of exactly. Like, he's got the raw talent to be able to. You can afford to. I don't want to say gamble on his development because he's not a pure refined linebacker just yet. But I mean, a guy with that athleticism, a guy with that range would be a perfect fit for them, in my opinion, if they do decide to go defense. But we're talking about the receivers. In my opinion, again, AJ Green, see you later, walking papers, everything. Like, you're gone. You can go to the clinic at this point because you don't even look like you're healthy at all. They hold T. Higgins. You still got Tyler Boyd returning to your slot. And I honestly do think that Auden Tate could be a solid wide receiver 3 for this team. Now, if you don't view him as the wide receiver 3 for the long-term future, you can draft a suitable round 3 to 5 type complementary receiver to add to this core, add to this really another weapon for Burrow. So I think they're in a really good spot from a weapon standpoint. And maybe, I don't know, I'm just thinking randomly off the top of my head, like they want to take a chance on like a Tamorian Terry in round 5. They could probably do something like that, but I don't think they're
Tutu Atwell or something. Like that. I think because we didn't mention they're going to lose John Ross in free agency as well. So maybe you get more of a field stretcher type.
Guy Smith, to
add to that offense. Maybe Rondell Moore's there in the 3rd round or something like that. But I think they don't really need to add too much. I think T. Higgins is a bona fide number 1 receiver. I think Tyler Boyd is a solid number 2 slash 1B to him. And as you said, I believe Auden Tate's a pretty solid receiver as well. So I think they do need to add someone, just not really high priority.
Yep, I fully agree.
Yeah, and again, if they wanted to add Brashad Perriman in free agency, I don't think that's a terrible idea either.
Heck, you want to bring in even like a veteran receiver to really round out that core for the next
Robinson.
1 or 2 years. I was going to say, like, if you can get T.Y. Hilton on a cheap deal, 5 years or $5 million for the next year or two, that could probably make sense. But
yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to bring in T.Y. Hilton, you might as well just bring back AJ Green. But still, yeah. Either way, I think just a low-end investment is basically what we think Cincinnati is going to do. So if you're a Joe Burrow dynasty owner, for example, and you're thinking, oh, he's going to get Jamar Chase, I don't think that's going to happen. If it does happen, the Cincinnati Bengals are stupider than I thought.
I'd be more excited with him getting a tackle than I would Jamar Chase.
I would too. Yeah, I would as well.
But anyways, we can move off the Bengals. They're pretty set at the position. Let's get to a team that is quite literally the opposite of set at the receiver position. I'm going to be talking about the New England Patriots. This team, they don't have their quarterback. I think we can all agree at this point that Cam's not going to be there like next year and years beyond. But they do have a lot of financial flexibility that I really didn't expect when I was going into this team. Again, they have just over $58 million in cap space. And the fit that I see here is going to be Corey Davis. Reason being, they have long needed that big body possession wide receiver to really complement.
Who doesn't stink, by the way, because N'Keal Harry is that, but he stinks.
Exactly. Because you got Edelman in the slot who could just be that savvy route runner in the middle of the field. And you have some speed in your depth positions with a guy like Demir Bird and a guy like Jacoby Myers. I think adding a guy in Corey Davis, he's young. He's got a huge frame, as I mentioned. He's coming off a breakout season where he had over 950 yards and 5 touchdowns in only 12 games played this year. Bill Belichick's going to see this guy. He's going to say, okay, this is a former 5th overall pick who has all the talent in the world that finally figured it out. And he's going to be able to turn him into that 1-2 weapon on this offense. So in terms of financial, I think a fit here would probably be around the 3 for $34 million type range. So a shade under $12 million a year, I think could get it done for Corey Davis.
Yeah, and I think we can both agree that they could stand to add a weapon in the draft very high as well. So if they were to sign a Corey Davis, we'll talk about tight ends later, but I mean, if Kyle Pitts is there at 15 and you signed a veteran quarterback, maybe you signed, I don't know, maybe you traded for Jimmy Garoppolo or traded for Derek Carr or something like that, and you have a veteran in-house. If you sign Corey Davis as your number 1 receiver and you draft Kyle Pitts, like that then you finally have an offense that is actually kind of functional with Damian Harris as your running back and a number of other pieces that you might have. So yeah, I think they need to add multiple pieces in both avenues, the draft and in free agency. And I think adding Corey Davis makes a lot of sense. He's exactly the type of receiver they need. And I think personality wise too, he kind of seems like a Patriot also.
It's just a quiet, humble guy that just gets to work. I definitely think that could be a good fit for him.
Yep. So to the next team that we're talking about here, and this is a team that's undergone a pretty big change at their coaching staff and in their front office in the past couple of years. So they have Joe Douglas, the New York Jets we're talking about. Joe Douglas in the front office and Robert Saleh coming in as the defensive coordinator, head coach, and Mike LaFleur coming in to run the offense. I mean, they can go a number of different ways with their quarterback position. We're not really talking about that right now. We're talking about their pass catchers, but whether they go with Sam Darnold for another year, whether they take Zach Wilson or Justin Fields at number 2 overall, whether they trade for Deshaun Watson, no matter what you do, your priority needs to be putting some pieces around them on offense. That includes running backs, offensive line, and receivers, and probably a tight end as well. So currently under contract, you only have Jamison Crowder and Denzel Mims, who, I mean, are solid pieces. I know Denzel Mims is the hot breakout candidate that everyone thinks is just going to break out. But this was a raw receiver coming out of Baylor. I don't anticipate a huge breakout season. If that is the case and he's the number 1 target on that team, I just don't see it happening. I think he's more well-suited to be a number 2 receiver. He's more of a field stretcher type with a big body. So I think you could stand to add 1, maybe even 2 weapons to this receiving core. And I think, again, like the Patriots, I think you do it in both avenues. I think in free agency, I'm predicting them to sign Curtis Samuel to a 3-year, $33 million contract and draft your alpha receiver on day 1 or day 2. You have 2 first-round picks. You're obviously not going to take a receiver at number 2. Maybe you trade down and take a receiver, or you use your number 23, I believe, overall pick on a receiver, or you use your early second-round pick on a receiver. The area of the draft that you're in with that late first and that early second, it's a great spot for this receiver class. And I think, I mean, Rashad Bateman would be a great option if he was there at 23, potentially even Terrence Marshall at the beginning of the second round or something like that. I think you go for your number 1 receiver in the draft, and you also sign another guy that can contribute. And I think Curtis Samuel gives you a lot from a versatility standpoint that a guy like Mike LaFleur, who was in San Francisco with Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, can really take advantage of.
Definitely. Again, what I would consider Curtis Samuel added to this offense would be, again, he can and has the ability to be that true field stretching type wide receiver, underneath type wide receiver. He just get the ball in his hands type of player because he can make plays. But I do think that you can use him in multiple avenues. You want to scheme him some touches out of the backfield. You want him to run that intermediate part of your offense, or heck, you want to put him on the outside and he can burn a corner there. He has the flexibility, versatility.
And he had somewhat of a breakout year this year too.
Yeah. So, I mean, I really like the fit. And again, you mentioned playing in a Mike LaFleur offense. Guess what? We've seen what Mike LaFleur, or the Kyle Shanahan, if you will, system has done to these versatile weapons like a Curtis Samuel. And I think this would be, from a schematic fit, unbelievable for him.
Yeah, I agree. So on to the Buffalo Bills. We're not really going to talk about them very much because they have Stephon Diggs, who's a bona fide number one receiver. They have John Brown coming back on his contract still. He's still pretty solid field stretcher. They have Cole Beasley, who somehow got an all-pro vote this year. And they also have Gabe Davis, who they drafted in the 4th round. So I think their receiving core is pretty set. I suppose they could move on from John Brown if they wanted to and draft a guy in the 2nd, 3rd round. But I think there's no reason really to disrupt it. I think if you're going to add weapons to this offense, it should be at tight end or at running back, not at receiver. So I think the Bills are pretty set at the wide receiver position. The Dolphins, however, are not set at the wide receiver position. It's probably one of their biggest needs on their roster.
100%. I think it's their biggest need, to be honest.
Exactly.
And as much as I love, I think Devontae Parker's a really good wide receiver 2 or so in this league.
I think he's a 1B.
Yeah, 1B. Yeah, like a guy you can probably count on for 800 to 1,000 yards and feel pretty safe with that. Getting a separator opposite him, I think, would be the best fit, especially considering what Tua really needs in this offense. And
I got a separator that Tua used at Alabama in mind. I got 2 separators that Tua used at Alabama.
And I think either one would be a fantastic fit. And you're talking about, again, you guys can see the little flash going at the bottom of the screen for the draft guide. My Jalen Waddle article is actually already on the site, and you'll see I compared him to T.Y. Hilton. I think he can create separation at a very high level at the next level and do a lot after the catch. And for a guy like Tua, who just needs a playmaker that he can trust, getting the ball out quickly to him and being able to make plays after the catch, I think would be a tremendous fit for this offense, because you already got that big-bodied physical X receiver in Devontae Parker. Adding that shiftier Z to that offense, I think would be tremendous in Jalen Waddle. Or
you go Devontae squared and get 2 Devontaes on one offense, because Devontae Smith is actually worth the 3rd overall pick, in my opinion. So if they wanted to stick and pick and take Devontae Smith,
I agree.
I honestly wouldn't be too against it, because I think Devontae Smith is really as ironclad of a film prospect. I know analytics people don't think he's ironclad, but there's nothing that you can poke holes in as far as him playing football on the field. So,
he's Marvin Harrison.
Yeah, literally. Like the way he runs routes is just absolutely ridiculous. He's probably the smartest receiver I've ever watched. And I think his year 1 impact could be very Calvin Ridley-esque, to use another Alabama receiver as a
another analytics hated.
Pardon?
Another darling that analytics hated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there's a reason that analytics people hate him, is because he didn't break out late, but there's a reason for that. It's because he went to Alabama, and 5 of the receivers on the roster are going to be 1st-round picks. So yeah, it's pretty hard to break out. There's only 1 ball. So
one thing. Do you think they're going to learn their lesson by John Mechie next year, or are they just going to keep taking that?
No, they never learn their lesson. They bet on guys like N'Keal Harry and Jalen Reagor year after year, and they all suck. So to the AFC South, this is a team that we're not going to spend a lot of time on just because we have no idea what they're doing. But the Houston Texans, this is all hinging on what happens with Deshaun Watson, like completely, because we'd love to say, oh yeah, draft a receiver. It's like, but with what capital? Like you don't have any draft capital to draft a receiver. So you need to trade Watson in order to draft a receiver.
They don't have draft capital and they don't have cap space. I don't know what their plan or what their structure of their previous GM was. Actually, it was Bill O'Brien, so that kind of makes sense.
But you don't let coaches be GMs unless they're like Andy Reid or Bill Belichick.
It's just a mess. Again, I have here, maybe you sign like a Nelson Aguilar to a 2-year, $10 to $12 million deal. You got Brandon Cooks on the outside. You got Randall Cobb. You got Kiki QT. Using a field stretcher like Nelson Aguilar as your wide receiver 4, I guess, would be a good fit. But either way, if this team loses to Deshaun Watson, I don't care who the fuck goes there. I don't want them.
They probably won't sign anyone or draft anyone really of note
Hopefully
if Deshaun
not.
Watson is gone, because then they're in a full status rebuild. And I mean, like the coach that they brought in is a wide receivers coach. So maybe he prioritizes this position, but he also coached the wide receivers for the Baltimore Ravens, who's like the worst wide receiver core in the league. So I honestly didn't get that hire. I thought they should have hired either Eric Bieniemy or Robert Saleh, but they got beaten to the punch on Saleh, and Eric Bieniemy is in his Super Bowl press conference today was like, yeah, I guess I'm not going to be a head coach again.
I never understood that. Was it David Culley or whatever?
Yeah.
Whatever.
We'll see how it goes. Sometimes the most scrutinized hires are the best ones, because a lot of people were off of the Sean McVay hire. So maybe that's what happens, but yeah, who the hell knows? So to the next team we got here, the Jacksonville Jaguars. I don't think they're going to really add too much to this receiving core. I think what you need to add for Trevor Lawrence, who we presume is going to be their first overall pick, they have DJ Chark, who's a productive, capable field stretcher. They have Laviska Shenault, who they drafted in the second round last year. I think if you do sign somebody, you do address the position, it's probably through free agency. Maybe you get a more experienced player in there because you have two young guys. Maybe you go out and sign, make a run at Allen Robinson, try and bring him back to Jacksonville. But I think it's probably more likely that they just bring in a low-end free agent. I'll bring up Rashad Perriman's name for every team, I guess. Like Rashad Perriman or like DeMarcus Robinson, maybe T.Y. Hilton or something like that. And you just kind of paired those guys with your young receivers and address other positions on your offense, mainly your offensive line and potentially tight end or running back.
Yeah, no, I agree. Again, they need at best a Taylor Sherry type option. Whether they do that, sign a cheap guy in free agency, or they bring, I don't know, a 4th or 5th round type receiver in. Again, I mentioned Tamori Terry earlier.
Or they re-sign one of their current free agents. I believe Conley and D.D. Westbrook are both free agents. You could just re-sign one of those guys, probably Conley.
Oh, yeah. Or if, like I mentioned, Terry, but you got a couple of speedier receivers in that room. So maybe you want to add like a possession guy on the outside. A guy I don't really like a lot, but a lot of people in the fantasy community want to hype him up. Seth Williams. You want to get a balance.
Or you could bring in like an Amon-Ra St. Brown or something like that, maybe in the second or third round. Yeah, they could go in a number of directions. I don't think it's a pressing need. I think they have bigger needs on their roster, mainly on their defense, probably offensive line, as I mentioned, and tight end. So I think receiver's fine for now. It's not like you're sending Trevor Lawrence out there with slappies. He's got some talented players to work with.
Yeah, he's not got AJ Green out there.
Yeah, exactly. So Tennessee, this is a situation that's a little murky right now because of the impending free agents. We already mentioned Corey Davis going to New England. I do think Corey Davis is going to leave Tennessee because I think he's going to command more than they're willing to pay him. And I honestly don't blame them for that, to be honest, because Corey Davis has kind of been a one-year wonder in terms of his production. It hasn't really been sustained production his entire Titans career. They didn't pick up his 5th-year option for a reason, and they already have a number 1 stud receiver that they're going to have to pay at some point. So maybe you don't want to lock up too much money in that position. I think I'll let you take care of what they're actually going to do at the position. But I do think Corey Davis is probably not a Tennessee Titan next year.
Yeah, I agree. Again, and if we're talking about the Titans, I think they address this in the draft. And when I'm talking about the draft, I think that's going to be either a day 1 pick or a day 2 pick. I think they got to adjust that position. I think they got to bring in a big body type possession receiver to really complement what they have there. Again, obviously AJ Brown is a big receiver as well, but he has that versatility to be able to give you run after catch game. Adding another guy who can really replace what Corey Davis did. We saw how well it worked last year with Ryan Tannehill. I think that would be the best fit for them. Talking about prospects that can fit that role for them. If you're going to go round 1, you could look at
Rashad Bateman, because imagine trying to run a halfback stretch with Derrick Henry and you have Rashad Bateman and AJ Brown blocking corners on the outside. That corner is getting pushed into the end zone.
Yeah, like a John Mechie type block there.
Yeah, exactly. So
just draft Mechie next year and you have the best blocking receiver trio in the league.
Literally. They I suppose they could opt for a speed guy, but they've already shown that they can get a lot of production out of guys like Khalif Raymond, so they don't even probably need to address kind of a speed type receiver. But yeah, I think they do need to add to the position in general. It's kind of just a matter of what your flavor is, what you want to do with the receivers you currently have. To the Indianapolis Colts, the next team we have here. This is a team that they could go a number of directions as well. I suppose they could make a run. I actually just saw a report that they're going to go after Chris Godwin. I mean, like, bad news for you. He's not going anywhere. So I don't know.
Good luck with that one.
Chris Godwin for, but I think the Colts could. I think it's a big name receiver or bust for them. If they don't get a Kenny Golladay, a Chris Godwin, and Allen Robinson, a receiver like that, I think they probably just punt the position, draft a guy late, or sign a low end guy and roll with the two young guys, Paris Campbell and Michael Pittman, and then add a tertiary piece in the draft or in free agency.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. Again, I have here, maybe you want to re-sign TY on another 1 year, $6 million deal, just to kind of like give you some more stability at the position. We saw he kind of had a little good run at the end of the season. You're not sure about Campbell's health, or you don't think he's ready to quote unquote be that number
two. To beat the Texans. T.Y. Hilton can help you do that.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, he'll win you 2 games a year at that minimum. So that's value. $6 million, $3 million per win. I think any GM would take that, to be quite honest.
Yeah, for sure. That's basically how much you pay Jared Goff.
Yeah, let's get into the Chiefs. I want to touch this one.
Yeah,
they're not going to do.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I was just gonna say they're not going to do much more than drafting a tertiary wide receiver to really replace. I think one of minimum D-Rob or Sammy Watkins is leaving. Probably going to be Sammy Watkins, because I don't see any real way they bring back that contract given their cap situation. But I think a tertiary receiver, whether that's your 2 or 3, depending on how much people love Mecole Hardman, would be a great fit. And I mentioned
realistically you're 3 or 4 because Kelsey's your number 1 receiver. So
that's fair. And I mentioned it last night on the Point After pod. I basically said, imagine this team with you got one element. You could either go big and get a Terrace Marshall who can really give you that
big receiver is a little kind of interesting because they have Watkins, who's a bigger guy. But if you have someone who doesn't stink and is big, that would be ideal.
Terrace Marshall at the end at 32, because let's be honest, this team doesn't have any needs. Or I thought of this as a possibility.
And also, you meant to say at 31, correct?
Yeah, sure. Man, I just get goosebumps thinking about if they added Kadarius Toney to that team.
Yeah,
like imagine having 3 guys that are like arguably
build a track team, man. You got a big armed quarterback and a tight end that owns the middle of the field. Just build a track team.
Kadarius Toney would be disgusting. He can, like, again, obviously Tyreek's been playing a little bit of slot for you recently in these last couple of years, but you let Kadarius Toney absolutely run the slot. You leave Tyreek Hill on the outside on an island with cornerback ones who, quite frankly, just can't run with him. Like, I don't see how any defense can keep up with that sheer speed, because you got a 4.2 guy in Tyreek Hill. You got a guy in Mecole Hardman who ran, what, a 4.28 or a 4.31? Something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Kadarius Toney is probably going to push the high 4.2s, low 4.3s in his 40 as well. So, I mean, you just got guys that can.
And then in the 5th round, you double back and get Rondell Moore and just add even more speed.
Rondell.
Yeah.
Fantasy community right now, he's not going to be a 5th round pick. Stop.
Anyway, so Los Angeles Chargers, another team that I think is just a tertiary receiver. You got your Mike Williams, who gives you 3 big catches a year. You have Keenan Allen, who's pretty much as good as they come and as consistent as they come. And then you have Hunter Henry, who's leaving in free agency in terms of pass catching weapons. I don't think he's going to be back. So I think when you're looking at the Chargers, what you probably need is some speed. And you got that out of Jalen Guyton last year, but he was an undrafted free agent. How much do you really want to count on him? And you mentioned Kadarius Toney. That makes a lot of sense to me. If you were to add him, I don't know, maybe in the 2nd or 3rd round, depending on when he goes, or you even add
top 40,
later.
by the way.
Pardon?
He's going to be a top 40, top 45 type pick.
Yeah, he could be. Yeah, you might have to use your 2nd rounder on him. Or you want to go later in the draft, you could go after like a 2-2 Atwall or something like that in like the 4th, 5th round or something.
Jalen Darden, Dwayne Eskridge. There's a lot of niche players in this draft, and speed is definitely not lacking in this receiver class. There's a lot of speed type receivers. Even Rondell Moore, who I hate, is very fast and could fit this offense pretty well also. I think 10 receivers are going to run 4.3 or better.
Yeah, this is
like
pretty quick class.
Or 4.35, like in the 4.3s is what I'm saying. Because let's be honest here, what 20 total players in NFL history have ran under 4.3?
Yeah.
Like,
speaking of under 4.3 running, we have the Las Vegas Raiders and their receiving core.
4.27.
So young receivers that you like, obviously. I believe there was a quote from Mike Mayock where he was like, I kind of wish we got more out of our rookie class, talking not just about the receivers, but the rookie class in general. So Henry Ruggs kind of didn't really have the greatest rookie season. He was banged up. He wasn't used correctly, in my opinion. And Brian Edwards just kind of has the trust of the fantasy community for absolutely no reason, aside from his breakout age. Nelson Aguilar is a free agent, and he was by far your most productive and your best receiver last year. And you're going to cut Tyrell Williams because he didn't play at all this season. And I believe he makes like $12 million a year and has 0 dead cap. So he is literally just complete cap casualty. There's no way he's on this team next year. I think, honestly, it would be smart to pair an established playmaker to help take away attention and pressure from those young guys to produce. So you need to evaluate Derek Carr. It seems like we say that every year. You're like, oh yeah, this is Derek Carr's prove it year. It's like, we've been saying this for 6 years now. I think what you do is you actually give him a prove it year, and you go out and you sign a big name free agent wide receiver. And the guy that we're going to pair to the Las Vegas Raiders is Kenny Golladay. So Kenny Golladay on a 4-year, $72 million deal. I don't think the Lions are going to re-sign him. I don't think they're going to maybe they franchise tag and try and trade him, but I don't think Kenny Golladay probably wants to be a part of a huge rebuild like what looks like is going to be going on there. And he is actually kind of an older prospect. He's like 26 years old or 27 years old, even though he's just hitting free agency from his rookie contract. So he probably wants to go somewhere and get paid, potentially win. I think the Raiders are a pretty decent balance of a team that needs a receiver and a potential winning opportunity. So I think he would like to go there. And 4 years, $72 million is quite a lot of money. So I think this is a great move for the Raiders. You have a very formidable offense now. If you sign Kenny Golladay, you have Waller over the middle of the field. You have Golladay as a downfield, big-bodied possession receiver. You have Ruggs to stretch the field. You can use him horizontally as well. And you have Brian Edwards for the fantasy community to continue to hype up, even though he doesn't do anything.
For sure. I completely agree. I think Kenny Golladay or the guy that we're going to mention in Friday's video would make a fantastic fit here. Get the slightly cheaper option, if you will, in Kenny Golladay, because you might get him at a little bit of a discount because of the injury. The Lions really can't afford to bring him back at all. And again, I'm not saying 4 years, $72 million is a quote unquote cheap deal, but for the talent of Kenny Golladay, for what he can provide for an offense, I think that would be, to be honest, one of the bargain deals of free agency. Getting him in at, what is that, 17 million or so?
Yeah, something like that. 18, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, 18. Yeah, so 18. Yeah, 18. So 18 million for Kenny Golladay. I think he can provide a ton of value on the boundary for this offense. Again, you got the speed option in Henry Ruggs. You got a younger slot option, if you will, in Brian Edwards, getting that physical vertical threat that can do it in the 50-50 game for you in Kenny Golladay would make a ton of sense.
Yep, for sure. So the last team we're going to talk about before we briefly touch on tight ends is Denver Broncos, who, in my opinion, just don't need to add anything to the position. They just got to let their guys develop, because aside from the drops, Jerry Jeudy proved that he's still one of the best route runners in the league, even though he can't catch the ball. So you had KJ Hamler, who came in and made some big plays for you. And you have Cortland Sutton coming off of a torn ACL, who's your true number one receiver. I think you have a formidable core. Maybe you bring back Tim Patrick in free agency, who's also an unrestricted free agent. Maybe you bring back, or you still have Deshaun Hamilton. Maybe he can give you something. Either way, I don't think you add anything to this core unless it's like a low end free agent like a Tim Patrick bringing back on a cheap deal. So quickly, while we get out of here, because they're just kind of a less important position, we're going to talk about the tight end free agents. I wrote down the teams in the AFC that could quote unquote need a tight end. And I listed the Bengals, Patriots, Jets, Bills, Texans, Jags, Titans, Colts, and Chargers. And obviously what stands out there is that the Titans and Chargers currently have the two biggest free agents on this list of the tight end free agents in Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry. So if either of those guys were to leave those teams, then they would be in a position where they need a tight end. I think the Patriots, Jags, Jets, and Colts are the most interesting to me. I'm pretty sure you agree, because we did this beforehand and decided that. So I think New England is the team that is going to kind of spend up at the tight end position.
Yeah, no, again, we have Hunter Henry going to the Patriots, and I think that would be a really good fit. Again, I mentioned you get the physical possession receiver and Corey Davis to complement what you got in Edelman in the slot, and then obviously those other speed receivers with Bird and Myers. Getting a guy in Hunter Henry who could just flat out score touchdowns when you're in the red zone can offer whoever's at quarterback a huge target to really be able to have. Again, last year Cam threw 8 total touchdowns, in part because they were using him specifically as a runner on the goal line, but also in part because, let's be honest, who are you trusting to throw the ball to in the end zone when you're on the goal line on that team?
They have a big-bodied receiver in N'Keal Harry. He was a Dynasty 101 2 years ago.
There you go. I mean,
yeah. No, yes, I agree. Like, they need to just get weapons in general, add multiple weapons to this team through the draft, through free agency. I think signing 2 guys like this definitely makes their offense a lot more appealing from a fantasy perspective, from a real-life perspective, scoring points. They need to add pieces, and I think Hunter Henry, much like Corey Davis, seems like a Patriot to me. He just kind of has a Patriot look to him, Patriot personality to him. So I think Hunter Henry to the Patriots on, like, I don't even know how much tight ends get paid here, like 3 years, $36 million or something like that, $12 million per year, $11 million per year, maybe.
I feel okay. I know Jarwin, I think, got a 3-year, $24 million deal. So he'll probably get just over that in terms of.
I would say probably whatever Austin Hooper gets is probably what he deserves. So I don't think it's too big of a.
100%. And again, we also mentioned the Jaguars as the next team. And we actually paired Gerald Everett, again, having that athletic field stretching tight end down that verticality of the offense, or down the center of the offense, to be quite honest, not verticality, but offers verticality. Anyways, a lot of mumbo jumbo. Giving Trevor Lawrence a weapon in the middle of the field is the ultimate goal here. And Gerald Everett has proven over his time with the Rams that when he's healthy and in his game, he's been able to give you a significant option down the seam. So I think Everett would be a really good fit for Jaguars.
Yeah, and Everett's a guy that a lot of people have wanted to be kind of unleashed because he was another one of those late round dynasty tight ends that everyone was a big fan of because of his analytics profile. So I think Everett going into a new situation where he's not stuck behind Tyler Higbee in an offense that doesn't really use tight ends that much, I think that could serve him pretty well. And if he gets a big contract, bigger than maybe most people expect, I'd probably just follow the money and expect that they have big plans to use him. And I think the Jags make a lot of sense. They actually somewhat made Tyler Eifert kind of relevant. So if they actually have a tight end that has some athleticism left in their body, like Gerald Everett, then they could actually do some things with him.
100% agree. So with that being said, Corey, that's the AFC. Got everything down packed, everything down covered. Talking about the teams that are going to draft, talk about the teams that are going to sign guys. But with that being said, anything else you want to add on to the end of the video?
No, I think you guys have been seeing this scrolling down the screen the entire time. Our pre-order for our draft guide is officially live. March 1st is the day that our draft guide officially launches, our rookie dynasty guide. All the rookies will be in there, as we mentioned on the video the other day where we broke down what's in the draft guide. I'll just give you a quick overview. We're going to have player cards, player write-ups, rankings, videos on how to watch film and how to evaluate prospects yourself, any kind of research notes that you might want to add, and so much more. So make sure you guys go down. Link is in the description to go pre-order the draft guide. Make sure you guys get a chance to do that for a chance to be in our official listener dynasty league as well.
Yeah, definitely. Again, you guys don't want to miss out on the opportunity. Looking for a good comprehensive guide, we offer that. And again, of course, you want to be in a league with myself and Corey, go get that pre-order.
Already got a couple spots filling up as well.
Yeah, we got a few orders in already, so make sure you don't lose out on that.
Yep, for sure. All right. So as I mentioned, if you guys enjoyed this, like the video, comment any of your thoughts down below. Maybe leave any thoughts of free agent landing spots that you think are really good. Maybe not a lot of people are talking about. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Hit the bell icon so you're notified anytime we post videos. We will be live either Saturday, Sunday, maybe both days, doing mock drafts, talking about the Super Bowl, all that kind of stuff. So if you guys don't already have notification bell on, make sure you guys have that on. Peace out, guys, and enjoy your Wednesday.
Peace out, y'all.